So, of course, it has been a couple of days since FIFA 23 came out, and I thought now is a good time to kind of get our all-round thoughts about the game and the gameplay. And I want to talk to you guys about it. Now, of course, I'm live on Twitch. Link is down below. I'm live each day, and I am going to really, confuse you guys here. And are you ready? I like the gameplay. We've done it. EA's done it. I actually like FIFA 23. I like it, and I'll tell you why. I don't know how long this video will be, but to my chat here, tell me down the chat, out of 10, what would you rate FIFA 23? And for you guys as well on YouTube, how would you rate it out of 10? For me, I want to say it's a solid, I want to say maybe an 8. It's not perfect. And I don't think we'll ever get to a point that it is perfect. There's always things that you think can be tweaked, and there's always things that you think can be better. But I will explain it to you in the simplest way that I possibly can. And that is that I think that FIFA 23 has an element of skill gap. That's what I like the most. I like the fact that it actually takes some sort of thought to break down a team. It takes some sort of thought to actually defend. You aren't going to just go through the game almost like a zombie almost and kind of just mind-numbingly playing the game and putting plays here and there, doing through balls non-stop, because it's mind-numbing. There's no thought behind it. It's just the most generic shit that we've had for years. Last year and 21 was awful for that kind of gameplay. Now, I want to say this also early. This is on the 29th of September, which means that this is, of course, the first week of the game, the first couple of days of the game. Well, I think we're 4 days in, 4 days, so it's not too long, but it is quite early. We know what will happen, because it always happens, and that is that this game will likely get a patch within the next 2 weeks, and whatever we think we're experiencing now will no longer be the same. Now, I've been enjoying playing drafts. I would say this, the majority of my gameplay experience, actually I think really all of it for the most part, has been from drafts. I've not really played any rivals because I just kind of don't want to yet. I want to enjoy draft. I want to make the most out of my 4.6k points, which I have. Got some coins, getting more coins, and once I've done with all my points, I would then decide to then build a team. That's what I'm doing. You guys may have other thoughts, of course. I'm not the kind of person to put money in the game, and I never will be, so this is how I'm enjoying the game. And I'll say this, I'm going to break down a few things. So number one, about the tempo of the game. And I saw this in a video, I think it was Inception, right? And he said this, saying that the reason why if you are one of them, like me, that's enjoying the gameplay, the reason why you enjoy it is because it plays like PES. And I feel that. I've enjoyed PES very much. When I play it, when it's unmodded on PC, it's a great game to play. It's a satisfying game to play when it's done right. You need some sort of thought process to play the game. Some actual thought process of when to pass, when to dribble, when to make a shot, in which situation to go for a certain skill move. It's not just running in a straight line anymore because that will not work. It's not just going for some mad through balls that just magnetizes the players like what we've had in previous years, because it won't work consistently. It cannot be done in a consistent way. One time out of 10, 20, fine, because that's what football is about, because sometimes they do work, but it's not the main consistent thing, and I like that. I enjoy PES for the fact that when you score a goal, for the most part, it is actually almost an achievement. It feels like you've done something to pass and weave through a defense. Dribbling has been nerfed this year, which people have been really going on about it, and I'm one of them that I've said publicly that I love a game which dribbling is a lot more faster, a lot more responsive, but I feel like there's a balance with that. If I would decide one side of it to be high responsive dribbling, but it almost feels like what happens is when there's higher agility stats and dribbling stats, people kind of just play the exact same way. If it's too OP, then I feel like the kind of range of players that you can actually use is limited drastically. For example, last year, you know who's a player which is great now, but sucked last year? is Erling Haaland, because he's not got the agility. He's not got the agility. He's not got the not composure, the balance. He's not got those stats, which makes a big difference, and therefore he's seen as unusable and unmeta. But now Haaland is immense, and this is what it is like for the first few weeks of the game. I'm gonna hope it stays like this for longer, but I'm not gonna hold my breath on it. But basically, if you make it so that it is so much more into the higher responsive dribbling players and the higher agility stats, you kind of just end up with a game which every single player is pretty much the same. I like the fact there's a variety of players that you can use. I like the fact that Haaland, or a bit more of a taller player, a bit more like, less agile, but can win some headers, can hold at the ball with a great finish, like a Lukaku maybe, for example, is a lot more usable. And that you can actually have a variety of which way you want to play. You want to cross it in, you want to hold at the ball, you want to shoot from range. They can all work. And that you can use them as almost, the hold-up player to go and do some free balls into your more faster, more agile players. Now, the way that I say that I like to play is that I like to basically pass my way through defense. I like triangles. I like thinking about how to get out of a situation. And sometimes it doesn't work, and let's be honest, most of the time that it doesn't. But give me your thoughts down below in the chat here. Would you rather have gameplay which is a lot more higher into the kind of more responsive, almost ping-pongy kind of gameplay, which you pretty much end up massively narrowing? If you got like a pot here full of all the type of players in the game, with different types of varieties of body types, and with different like strength stats that means different things, heading, everything right. I feel like when you make it a lot more about the agility, and because dribbling is a massive thing that everyone talks about, and I kind of feel like that's going to really narrow your experience in terms of who you can actually use in the game. People say that shooting is maybe a bit too OP at times, and I like the shooting. I like the fact that if you actually get inside of your opponent's 18-yard box, if you just hit it, most of the time it should be going in. People say that keepers have been awful this year. If I get inside my opponent's box, if I get a chance inside of their box to shoot with my striker with decent shooting stats, it should be going in. If I make the right choice, if I go near post or far post, if I go for the right choice, it should be almost going in. I want to say 70% of the time, because if you can break down your opponent's defense, that's on your opponent. If they don't defend well enough to defend their bots, then there should be a consequence for that. And that's why I like defending this year. But of course, that leads to one problem that we've already seen, in that if people can't defend, what are they going to do? They're going to do what they've always done, and that is drop back. That's the one main negative. The one main negative is drop back. We've seen this back in 20, and people have their own thoughts on that game. I would rather have a game which I feel like you actually would need to defend and control your players, because you need to, because like if you don't control your defenders, they aren't going to defend for you. They're just gonna stand there, which I think is helpful, because it actually has some level of skill gap when you're trying to defend. Not often do I concede a goal and I'm there kind of annoyed at the game. Most of the time, most like 90, there's always gonna be one or two that you think is just a bit nonsense. Maybe they run into your defender and they still come out with the ball. That's always going to happen, and sometimes it does happen in real life. But most of the time, if I do concede a goal, I kind of think about the fact that I could have controlled my player a bit better. I could have switched to my other defender and covered that spot. Maybe I rushed out with my centre back and got myself out of position. I always think about what things I could have done better to get myself out of that situation. And that if they do get a chance in the 18-yard box, and that they do have a chance, I think that's my fault. And that's what I think it should be about. The speed of the game is definitely much more slower. Much more slower. And that means that you actually have an element of thought when you do an attack. When you actually go for an attack, how are you going to take it? You can rush it and go for counters all the time. You can do that. You can try to do that. But it's not going to work most of the time, unless if you got very insane top level players. I mean, I had a draft with a Ginola. I've used Ginola. I've used a Neymar. Neymar on the ball felt really good. Not perfect, and people say, oh yeah, but a Neymar should feel so much better on the ball. But I feel like he shouldn't, because he's still a normal gold based card. That's why there is an element of you can improve your cards by getting better players. could be pay to win, whatever. But I don't think players should be perfect just by a normal base score. They're much better than other players. Like a Neymar's 10 times better on the board than Zaha, for example, and that's kind of what you pay for when you get a higher value player. Power shots. I've not experienced too much of power shots this year. I haven't. I've not experienced too much. Maybe I'm not facing a person that knows too much of it. But if you're about the kind of wind-up power shot like feature, I feel like if your opponent has enough time to go for that kind of wind-up, then that almost is, again, kind of your fault. Because there is a kind of slow motion sort of like, you can see it. You can see them about to do it. And you got like a half a second to a second to really try to react to it. If you aren't close enough to them to go for that, to block it or tackle them, then they should reap the rewards of that. Because that is a risk-reward situation. You go for that power shot, there's a chance you can get tackled because you have a bit of delay until you actually hit it. But if you go for that and you hit it well, and you got time, you got space, you should definitely get the rewards of that. Set pieces, when it comes to like corners, I've not learned how to really go through it, and I think there is also a skill gap there. If you actually want to go for the effort of learning about set pieces and corners and free kicks, if you actually want to learn about it, I'm pretty sure that you can nail them. I haven't. And that's because I've actually not gone through the effort of learning how the corners work, how indirect free kicks work. And I'm sure that people have, and they have gone through the effort, and that they will actually find a way to score more goals by actually going through how it works. About how to actually hit the ball, if it's chipped, if it's the kind of curved one to left or the right, outside the butt. I'm sure that if you actually go through the effort of learning how to really hit the ball and where to hit it, I'm sure there's a skill gap there on how to actually get the best out of your set pieces. I think that's why PES players are liking this game and why FIFA players are struggling. I mean, that's a weird thing. How would you describe a FIFA player? What is a FIFA player? How would you describe one in comparison to a PES player? Because I think that's the main kind of issue here of how to really determine which is which. Of like, for me, PES, it's more about trying to play real life football. It's much more realistic, much more slower, and typical FIFA players that are used to FIFA don't enjoy it because they find it much more boring, because they actually have to, because they aren't good. If you're a FIFA player and you just hop on PES, just like me, I'm not a PES player. I'm still a FIFA player, but I appreciate what PES offers in comparison to FIFA. And that you're saying that FIFA players abuses the meta. And I feel like every single game has a meta. PES must have a meta. There must be types of players that are better to use than others in PES. But FIFA definitely is a lot worse for that. That is definitely a lot more, you can tell a lot more faster. Johnny's saying, thoughts on the AI. I was playing career mode and the AI scored every single shot on target they had. I mean, if it's AI, if it's against offline, I guess it depends on what kind of, team you're against, what kind of difficulty you're against. I've not played too much against the AI. I played a couple games on career mode, but not too much. It kind of depends on what your difficulty is. But like, if it's like legendary or ultimate, then yeah, they should be pretty much like, it should be a tougher game. It should be a tough experience. And I like that because I feel like I've played on ultimate and legendary many times for career modes, and I find it too easy. I could have Burnley with pretty much the normal Burnley team, other than like 3 players. I have like Martial and like Lozano, for example, and I win the league. And it's like, I don't like that. It's too easy, and I do that on legendary, bro. So it's like, I like the fact that it should be tougher when you play against the AI, and it should be actually like a battle to actually improve your team and go through the leagues. Pace is one thing which is still a big thing, but I like it because you can use it to your advantage. But if you just press RT all the time, it's not going to work. Like, if you just run in RT and try to like, let's say, just kind of like move left and right while still sprinting, you're going to get tackled, bro, because they're going to take big, heavy touches and you're going to get caught out. That's just, and I like that. There should be an element of skill to it, so you know when to keep sprinting, when to stop sprinting, and that you can't just run non-stop, and you can kind of go more left and right. You can't just do that. You can't just weave through defense. Sometimes you can if they're fast enough, I guess, but you're going to get caught out a lot more times than you usually would. Passing. The thing is that in typical FIFA games, the passing stat is pretty much irrelevant. You do not care about passing stats. But right now you do. if I have with a Zaha with 73 passing, I'm going to notice that he will not be as good as another winger with less pace and a lot better passing stats. For example, just trying to think of another winger in the game from BPL, Riyad Mahrez, for example, maybe. Riyad Mahrez, bit less pace, of course, high dribbling, but better passing. And he'll be a better player to try and link up players with. Of course, passing stats, typically you don't care about. And at this stage of the game, will it still last for longer than 2 weeks? I don't know. Probably not with patches. But with a midfield, I've noticed with a Decore, it's stressful, man. It's stressful. Like, if I've got a counter and I see Zaha running on that left-hand side and I want to go for a through ball to try and find him, I will not do it with Decore. If he's on the ball, I will not do the pass because I know that it's not going to work. If I got a Nakata on it, it's a lot more higher chance of it going through, and I'm going to make the pass for him. I like the fact that you can go for more players with a bit less pace, and that they have higher passing, and that will make a big difference in terms of how you can move the ball. High risk, high reward situation as well. If you go for a pass through the lines of the players, that should be a risky thing to do. It shouldn't just be pinging off your player all the time. Like, it shouldn't. That's not how real football works for the most part, because it is a risky thing to do. Go to safe passes, it goes to your players. Typically it should. But you go for the more kind of your long through balls, which you kind of always see on FIFA, they're not going to reach your player most of the time unless you have a Modric, unless you have a Toni Kroos, unless you have a Kevin De Bruyne, because they have the actual range and the vision stat to actually do that pass, which I think is also great. Basically, all my kind of thoughts about the game all goes down to the fact that I like the fact that there's actually some sort of skill gap to the game. It actually takes a second to understand what you want to do, and that how you want to do an attack, how you want to defend, and that almost every attack, in a way, kind of feels different to one another. Do you want to cross? Do you want to go for a near post or far post? Do you want to go for a triangle? You're just going to go for a 1-2. You want to go for maybe a bit of skill that they may not notice. Bit risky to go for a skill, but sometimes it will work really well. Go for a roulette, go for a Berber spin, go for a ball roll, go for a body feint, and that they are all risky to do, but if done well, you can get past one man completely. Do a roulette, spin past a man, you're in space. But sometimes it won't work out like that because it takes a bit of time to go through that spin sometimes, and that you are vulnerable for a tackle. Risk and reward. That's what I've always wanted in FIFA. For me with FIFA, I kind of see it in the same way that my older brother, he was a FIFA pro player back in like FIFA 12, 11, 13, right? In this kind of era of FIFA, when it was pretty much, like, I played my brother. I'm a decent player, right? But I never ever beat my brother on FIFA. And I'll tell you why. Because he was a 10 times better defender than me. He knew where I wanted to pass. He knew where I wanted to take the ball. He knew. And if he controlled his defense, which he did fantastic, he was a pro player. I never beat my brother in FIFA, like, I think once in like 5 years. It's insane, because he just always knew what I was going to do in the ball, and he always stopped it. He intercepted, he perfectly put his defender in the right spot when I'm on a counter to try and like block out the pass and block out everything, block out the shot, and that's how I see FIFA now. If you can actually defend 10 times better than your opponent, you should pretty much win. And that's kind of how I see the game now, that if I am a better defender than my opponent, then I usually 90% of the time will win the game. The slower the tempo of the game is, the slower the tempo, the more skill gets involved, because basically then it's more about how you move the ball, how you pass the ball, how you break down the defense, more than just running through, just doing non-stop through balls and RT sprint all the time. You know what I mean? I think that more skill gap is involved when the game is on a slower level. But lads, that's just my thoughts. Tell me yours down below in comments. Do you guys enjoy the game? Give me a rating out of 10. How do you see the gameplay right now? And we may come back to this in like 2-3 weeks time when we have a lot more knowledge about the game. This isn't like a full review. This is more like an initial impressions, where do I stand by the game. And I think that this is definitely steps in the right direction in terms of a better, more enjoyable experience, much more of a satisfying experience. You know, the bigger the skill gap, the better it is for me. You know, like if I deserve to win a game or not, if I defend better, if I am more smarter in the way that I play, you know, and that means that I could have a much worse team and still beat people who have pay to win teams because I can read what he wants to do. I can defend better than him. That's how I see FIFA and how it should always be. That I think defense is the most important part of the game for the most part. And if you get a chance, if you break down your opponent's defense and you get a shot in the 18-yard box, it should be going in a lot of the time. Not all the time. The keeper should assist to some point, and I guess that's a perfect balance of trying to find how much is too much. But all in all, I enjoy it. So tell me your thoughts down below, and I hope you guys enjoy your day. Peace out.